That's great, Zoe. Thank you so much. All right. I have a quick announcement from Kara Benjamin at DHS about the Connect with Me cards. So Kara has mentioned it before, and we will also share this out in an email, but wanted to let everybody know that DHS has worked hard to create these Connect with Me cards. They're conversation starter cards that are meant to start conversations between adults and youth anywhere, anytime. They can be asked by the adult to the youth, youth to the adult, youth to youth. They include a variety of questions covering many topics such as relationships, mental health, growing up, building connections, and more. These cards are created for youth around middle school age or older, but can be simplified for younger ages. They might be used during car rides, at restaurants and waiting rooms, or any other place where adults and youth might have conversations. And these cards were created with permission based off the Missouri Department of Health project. And they have a link also. So DHS also has a link where you can view the cards electronically before you decide to go ahead and place an order for those. So we will also share, Zoe, did I send that link to you? If you want to put a link for ordering the Connect with Me cards, we'll put that link in the chat. And then following up our call today, when our recording is ready, we will share any updates, share any notes that are important to go along with it, and we'll also share out additional information about these Connect with Me cards. Did see Heidi hop on the call, and Heidi, I'm not putting you on the hot seat. But if anyone has questions about the Connect with Me cards, I will do my best to answer, but if Heidi is still on, she may also be able to answer. So pause for just a second and see if anyone has any questions.
There was one question in the chat from Carla. Oh. She asked, are the Connect with Me cards information sent out to schools?
That's a great question. And I think I know the answer to that right off the bat. And right now, the cards are intended, or the promotion is intended to be for health departments, and making it available to all of you first. And then after Kara and the team at DHS feels like they have been distributed well to health departments, then they may be made available more widely. But right now, just available for all of you. I'm also quickly cracking into a box because I didn't open this box. You're welcome. I didn't open this box before our call, but I did request a few cards so I could see them and help promote them as well. And I hadn't opened my package yet, but I can just hold them up here. They're about the size of an index card, maybe slightly larger than your average, but not like a 4x6 size in this index card. There's directions on the very front that talk about how to use the cards. There is a like a color-coded topic or categories breakdown. So as you look at the cards here, you'll see that they are color-coded, and then this key gives you an opportunity to look at that, and then it just moves right in. So there are icebreakers and building connection cards, taking action cards, technology cards or technology themes, relationships, development, body image, mental health, substances, growing up, and tough stuff are the categories in there. So they look really nice. They're primarily white with just a nice size black font, and then just gives a nice guide, and they're front and back. So there's a question on each side of the card as well. So these are really fantastic. I think they look great. Oh, great. We have someone that added the example online in there as well. Thank you for putting that in there. Oh, and Zoe just messaged me that she is getting a message that my bandwidth appears to be low. All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and shut my camera off. I apologize. I'm going to be presenting to you, and you are not going to be able to see me, but hopefully my slides will engage you, and we will be able to engage and interact. My intention today is to talk about compassion resilience, But I also want to make sure that we have time for some really great interaction and dialogue in this space, as well as opportunities for our own self-reflection and growth, because a lot of this topic is what we need to do to make sure that we are recognizing where we're at and strategies that we can do to take care of ourselves as well. All right, I just saw another question in the chat. The form asks how many decks we would like. How many are we able to get? I don't want to take away from others. All right, if Heidi is still on, I might see if she will pop in and answer that question.
There currently isn't a limit. So yeah, ask for what you want and we will try to fulfill it. So that's why you got first dibs, is we want the health departments to have them first. So request what you can use.
Great. Thanks so much, Heidi. I appreciate that. I will say that in our conversation earlier in the week, Kara did mention too, there's not a team just dedicated to distributing these cards. So there is a group that's going in, led by Kara, I believe, that going into the Madison office and distributing them as requests come in. If you need them and would like to use them for a particular event, I believe on that form you have the ability to indicate when that event might be. They're going to do the best they can to get things out, but if you're submitting in a really last minute request, that might be difficult for them. So submit plenty in advance so they have time to get into the office, get those all packaged up and out the door and sent your way. Great. All right, if any other questions come up, please do not hesitate to ask. All right, hopefully you're able to see my screen. Like I said, unfortunately, I'm gonna go ahead and turn my camera off and let me just quick here, bring my chat over so I can see my chat on the screen over here. And we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you again for joining today. I'm grateful to have all of you here as a part of our office hour session today. The topic today is compassion resilience. And one of the things that we've mentioned throughout this past year is that we really heard loud and clear from our health departments that were involved in the adolescent well-being objective last year, the high rates of turnover and the impact that that has not only on the office culture and the ability to do the work, but the ability to do really sustainable work in any particular area when we're seeing a lot of turnover. We also see and hear this level of turnover in other service areas. And for that reason, in the behavioral health program area that I'm the program manager for in the Health and Wellbeing Institute at Extension, we have really prioritized service professional well-being in a very specific logic model around to support the work that our educators are doing around the state, and working to build out resources in this space and tools and strategies that we can bring to all service professionals, regardless of the location that they're in or the work they are doing. Recognize a high level of burnout and compassion fatigue in service professionals. And so again, thank you for being here today. And if you have questions, if you have thoughts, if you want to engage, certainly welcome you to unmute and just talk freely, but you're also welcome to share your thoughts and reflections into the chat. This is certainly an opportunity to engage by choice. And we also trust that you're able to just be present today and reflect and engage on your own and maybe with colleagues around you as well later on. Today, we're going to talk about the concepts of compassion fatigue and burnout. We'll also review some opportunities to build resilience in ourselves, focusing specifically on thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And then we'll close out our day today with some time for reflection. So just to get us started, this is an opportunity really just for you, but I want you to take a moment and reflect on what you feel like is the guiding purpose in your work. And if you have a piece of paper, I would encourage you, just a scratch piece of paper works fine, but take a moment and just reflect on these comments on the screen here, these questions on the screen. Why did you choose the work that you do? Think about all of the reasons that inspired you to choose this work in your service profession. And why do you even show up to this work when we know that it can be difficult? I'll give you just a minute to reflect, and then maybe a minute to do some quiet just writing on your own. All right. Go ahead and just sort of set that aside for now. We're actually going to come back to that in just a little bit and reflect on um, our thoughts around our purpose and what brings us to our work, even when we know that this work can be difficult at times. So next, we're going to move in and really just talk more about these concepts of compassion fatigue and burnout. And what we know is that people in service professions experience many stressors. I'm curious, for all of you that are here today, what are some of the stressors that impact you related to your work specifically? And you can, again, unmute or go ahead and just put those thoughts into the chat and we'll read those reflections out. Deadlines and workload, schedules, wearing multiple hats, not enough time to accomplish everything, staffing shortages, knowing there's suffering that I can't relieve. I'm sure that these thoughts resonate with others. The desire to want to do it all and do it all well, but challenges in capacity. Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm sure that this is all resonating with so many of you. The things that you've shared there really hit the highlights of the things. Oh, and I see more coming into your, yes, absolutely. Ensuring staff work-life balance. So not only your own, but those that you maybe supervise, support, or oversee, working with uncooperative coworkers and lack of capacity. People on the other end of the calls in a call center can deplete you. Not enough time between calls to decompress. Yes. Pulled in many different directions, have a hard time focusing well on this work sometimes because of that. And then the changing of prioritization. Yeah, all of those things are so true. And they certainly have a unique spin and tone for those of you in the public health world. And I would say I have given a presentation similar to today's presentation in many different service areas. And oftentimes I hear and see such very similar themes. And really, again, what you all have shared in this space there, and thank you for taking the time and being willing to do that, really resonate as the top stressors that are expressed for service professionals. And we know that these stressors can really lead to our feeling ineffective in our work. And when we feel ineffective in our work, sometimes that also bleeds over into our personal life. And so while you're sharing all of those things, I'm also thinking about how our day-to-day stressors at work also impact impact our personal lives and our personal ability to connect and have emotional capacity left at the end of the day for the other people in our lives. When we come into a service profession, we're drawn to that service profession by our nature, and we often are caregivers in multiple ways outside of our work as well, which is really what compounds the compassion fatigue that we experience in our professions and in our lives, just as a general rule, because it often is just part of our makeup and who we are as service providers. So when we get to that place, we know that compassion fatigue can often result. And so when we think about compassion fatigue, we think about some of the symptoms that might be present. And hopefully you're tracking my slides and can see them on the screen here. But we know that we see compassion fatigue show up in our emotions, in our behaviors, in our thoughts, and in our physical being as well. And so I am going to invite all of you, to go ahead and just annotate on the screen here. If you go up, or if you find the annotation button, and I did just go ahead and hide the names of annotators. So as you're able to annotate, you can take the stamping tool. So if you open annotation and you find the stamp tool it's kind of symbolized by a little check mark. And you may find annotation, depending on how your screen is configured right now, you may find it at the very bottom of your screen. You might have 3 dots that open up, and then you'll find annotation in that space. When you click on annotation, again, you'll see that check mark, which is the kind of the icon for the stamp. You can open that up, and then you can pick any of the annotation tools or options. And I'd love for you to just share some annotation on the screen here about the spaces that you notice maybe your compassion fatigue showing up the most for you. Oh, great. We've got some people clicking along. Thank you. Mm. Hmm. As you're clicking and sharing on there, I'm just even personally like resonating and connecting with each of you. And many of you may know and maybe have heard from other times that I've introduced myself and talked about my role, but I'm also a registered nurse. So I come to my work in extension with a background in healthcare, in nursing. I've worked in behavioral health spaces, as well as acute care in the hospital setting, and then also education with the counseling emphasis and background. So when I share this work, I share it from a place of my own personal being as well, and my own personal observations in the different service professions that I've worked in. In extension, our service profession looks different than the work that you are doing, and yet it is still very much a service industry, and all of the things that you shared there too, capacity, changing priorities, not enough time, desiring to do the work well, but at the end of the day, even though you put in probably more time than expected, we also run out of time. So our team here in Extension also can really resonate and empathize with what you're sharing. It's interesting to me as I see all of the annotation popping up on the screen here, such a variety of connections to these various symptoms that are experienced, and yet I think there's just a couple on here that haven't been marked. I'm guessing, again, I hid names of annotations, so I can't see, and you all shouldn't be able to see who's annotating either, and I prefer it that way. I think someone just went around and made a big star and ring around fantasizing about changing career, and that really highlights and emphasizes this trend that we've seen in our service professions, everything from, again, our hospital and clinic-based healthcare industry to our educational world, in the K-12 world specifically, certainly our health and human services departments. We are seeing it in our ag-connected industries, so those that are supporting farmers, everything from our farm service agencies to the veterinarians that are working with those farmers. We are seeing high rates of burnout in those spaces as well. So thank you all for taking time to just reflect on that, to connect with it. My hope is that as a part of this, and when we move into the section of today where we'll talk about building our own resilience, we can pause and think about where we connected on this chart our own selves and where this fatigue is beginning to show up. Recognizing it and being aware of it is a really important piece of being able to take some positive and intentional strategies to building some resilience in these spaces that we're sharing. So I'm going to go ahead and clear the annotation. There we go. Thank you again for taking time to just really connect with that graphic and share your thoughts in that space. I appreciate it. So as we noted, we don't need to spend too much time on this. We know that compassion fatigue, specifically in the workplace, leads to lower productivity. It leads to absenteeism, high rates of turnover. And we know that our partners and our clients also see it too. They see it in in absent or diminished empathy, maybe being quick to frustration or annoyance. And again, just inconsistencies in maybe our attendance or our ability to be attentive in spaces. So we know that compassion fatigue shows up in those spaces. We also know, as I mentioned earlier, that compassion fatigue carries over to our personal lives, and we begin to see impacts in our personal lives when we're experiencing compassion fatigue in the workplace as well. We also know that it creates a vicious cycle, and that guilt or shame that we may feel for not feeling as much empathy as we think that others deserve, or for feeling frustrated with other individuals when we recognize they maybe don't deserve our level of frustration. And again, creates this vicious cycle that really exacerbates and perpetuates compassion fatigue for ourselves. What I want you to know is compassion fatigue is a normal response to chronic and everyday stressors that we experience, to being pulled in too many directions, to having our emotions stretched and not having the adequate opportunity for us to be able to recover and to care for ourselves in those times. It's okay that you feel frustrated. What matters really is how we respond to those feelings that we experience during compassion fatigue. And while it's a normal response, it doesn't mean it has to be a place where we get stuck and where we get to this place of burnout. So we know that human beings thrive on having a sense of control and seeing the impact of our efforts. And when compassion fatigue goes on for too long, and when we don't feel like we have a sense of control, we don't see the impact of our efforts, it really does lead to this experience of burnout. And when we get to that place of burnout, then we see individuals making decisions like career changes and other maybe unhealthy behavior choices that they're using to cope because of where they're at. So we don't want to dwell on all of this too long, although it is important for us to recognize it, to call it out. I also recognize that all of you are probably very aware of these concepts. But if you're anything like me, it takes sitting through a presentation, maybe preparing a presentation, to really pause and recognize that while I know compassion fatigue and burnout are a thing and they're real, and I know that it's experienced in my thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and in my body, just really pausing to reflect on that is an important piece so that we can get to the place of being ready and being able and open to build resilience. And that's where we're going to spend the bulk of our time today, is really talking about finding resilience. And finding resilience, again, is that capacity to cope with and recover from difficult situations, the ability to adapt to the challenges that work and life just throw at us. And resilience is also the ability to grow through difficult times and difficult experiences. Resilience is also all about creating a toolkit of choices that you have to respond to stress. And we know that resilience often is rooted in things that we have control over. And we know that we have the power not to control all of the things around us, but we have the power and the ability to control our own thoughts, our own behaviors, and our own emotions or feelings. And so again, today we're going to work on just reminding ourselves. Again, I want to acknowledge all of you have heard presentations like this before. You've attended self-care strategies. You probably teach about some of this work just like I do. And yet it's really valuable to sit for just a bit and focus on your own self and not be in a position of sharing these skills with someone else, but instead taking this information in for your own self and your own being. And so we're going to work today to maybe put some tools in your toolbox, or maybe just dust off the ones that are sitting in your toolbox but haven't been used for a little while. So we'll first start talking about the concept of our thoughts. So when we think about our thoughts, we know that it's not a situation that makes us feel a certain way. It's the way that we think about or interpret the situation that creates those feelings that we experience. And sometimes if we can change our thoughts, we can change our feelings, and we can change our behaviors. So I have this star on that screen there because there's this star model of thinking that we can utilize to stop and pause and really reflect on our thoughts and how we're reacting to a situation. So here's a little model that we'll walk through. So get ready to either unmute or put some things in the chat to help me out here as we walk through this. So one of the ways that we might think about a situation like, I can't find my keys, our instant thought might be, someone must have moved them. What might be a feeling that results if that's the thought that comes after that situation? I can't find my keys. Someone must have moved them. Oh, look at that. People are ready. Frustration, anger, panic. Yeah, another anger. Absolutely. And then our response to that might be what? What might an action be, or a next thought? What might be the next step if those are our emotions? Yeah, we might yell at someone, we might lash out. Absolutely. And we can think about how push blame. Great. Thanks so much for engaging in this space. Make accusations. Yeah, all of those things result in kind of that perpetuated cycle of negative thoughts, feelings, and actions. Yelling out, "Who moved my keys? And where did you put them?" I might personally resonate with that statement, Melissa, a little bit myself. That's why it was so easy to do that. Yeah. So when we think about that, our situation, our thoughts, our feelings, or that affect, and that response, we think about that STAR model of thinking and how that can really impact how we perceive a situation. So we think about our thoughts and recognize that there are some traps that we can fall into, maybe professionally better known as cognitive shortcuts that we take. I like to think about them as traps that our thoughts sort of take us into. So it's really that all or nothing thinking, right? Failing to see that there's so much gray. But even if we take this general sentiment, someone's always moving my stuff, that all or nothing thinking, things are always happening. I can't do anything right. I'm not making any difference at all. We also can fall into the trap of overgeneralization, forming this global judgment based on maybe one simple action. I made a mistake, and therefore I'm not suited for this work, or I'm not able to problem solve this, or I'm struggling with one colleague, and therefore maybe I'm just not a good team player. Maybe it's me that's the problem. Other cognitive shortcuts that we might experience is something we call a mental filter. So allowing one negative action, again, to outweigh all of the positive ones. The one thing that didn't go well means I can't be proud of all of the other things that have gone well, or I don't even allow myself to see those pieces. Discounting the positive is another trap, believing that something positive can't be true. If my boss knew the truth, she wouldn't say that I'm a good employee. Another set of cognitive traps includes mind reading, believing that we know what the other person intended, right? Assuming intent. We see this all the time in the world that we live in now with all of our digital communication and technology. We do a lot of inference into intention and meaning in an email, which we know is a really dangerous place to go. And it can really make it difficult to be resilient and find the positive in the work that we're doing. And then that emotional reasoning, because I feel it, it must be true. I'm feeling lonely, therefore no one must like me. And then the final set of cognitive traps or shortcuts, should statements. We in Extension like to call this shoulding on ourselves. And sometimes we should on other people too. So imposing realistic expectations that may not be met. I should have done whatever. That results in feeling guilty. He should have done that, which leads to those feelings of resentment and sometimes anger. I try to catch myself on a regular basis. I've really just even tried to eliminate the word should, and so much so that I'll really like notice it when I say it myself, and I notice it in other people, and sometimes wonder about the intention behind that word itself. And then personalization, that feeling like we're to blame for anything that goes wrong. If I was better at my job, all of my clients would be thriving. There's probably a couple of cognitive traps in that one there. So I'm going to go backwards on these cognitive traps, and I want you to just think for a bit about the ones that resonate the most with you. What do you see yourself? What do you see yourself maybe getting stuck with? If you feel comfortable, go ahead and put them in the chat. You can also just reflect on this yourself. Maybe pull that scratch paper out again and make a note to yourself about the cognitive traps that you catch yourself in. And again, before we close out our time today, we're gonna have some time to set our intentions moving forward. But which ones catch you the most? All or nothing thinking, overgeneralization, mental filter, discounting the positive, mind reading, emotional reasoning, those should statements, and personalization. Yeah, thanks for those of you that are sharing in the chat. I think the value of being able to share and just see other people commenting too is it helps us to remember that we are not alone in these spaces. We all get caught in these traps. And we all have our own that are tricky, but to recognize that other people are in a similar space is an important part of building empathy for ourselves, which also helps us to build our own resilience. So thank you again for those of you that are taking a minute to share in that space. And again, it's okay if you don't feel comfortable sharing. I invite you to just do some reflection on your own and take some notes of the spaces that you're getting trapped in your thoughts. So again, we don't want to just sit and admire that and recognize that. We want to think about what can we do about those spaces. So there's some questions that we can ask ourselves when we catch ourselves in those cognitive traps. What's the evidence for my thought? Are there good reasons for thinking that something is true? How about what are the alternatives? So I might have that all or nothing feeling. I might be doing some mind reading. But maybe I'm not accurate in that. Maybe that's not right. So, what are the alternatives that could be happening in that situation? Are there equally good or better reasons for thinking that something else might be true? And then the next question that we can ask ourselves is what are the implications? Even if it is true, are the implications as bad as I fear? Have I created this to be much greater than it needs to be in my mind? And that really does tie into that overgeneralization and a few others of those traps as well. So important for us to think again, what is the evidence? What are the alternatives that I could be using as opposed to that cognitive trap? And what are the implications if maybe my worst thoughts are actually true? Is it really likely as bad as I've created it to be in my mind? So with that in mind, let's try this one again. Let's think about, I can't find my keys. So recognizing that we may fall into that cognitive trap, a cognitive trap, what's another way that we could think, another thought we could have related to I can't find my keys that avoids these cognitive traps? Ooh, maybe I left them in my pocket. Yeah. Where do I remember seeing them last? What was I wearing yesterday? Retrace my actions? Absolutely. Yeah. What feelings might result? Oh, I must not have put them on the key holder. Yeah, taking our own ownership. What are feelings or affects that might result when we adopt that kind of thinking? I'm curious, as you're shifting your thinking and we're thinking about that differently, if you even notice anything in your bodies. How we might experience frustration with ourselves, sure. Yeah. We might be able to adopt a more reasoning mode, calm perspective. Yeah. Even though we might be frustrated with ourselves, hopefully we're able to recognize that we have the ability to problem solve through this, though. Keep calm, think clearly, staying open-minded. Yeah. We're motivated to look on our own as opposed to not blaming. Carrie, that's exactly, it popped up just as it was coming out of my mouth. Absolutely. Instead of adopting a blaming mentality, we stay open-minded to be able to continue to look. And then what's likely the result of all of these pieces? Melissa, I love that. Thinking about it in a really positive sense, like this is an opportunity for me to clean out my purse while searching for my keys. Love that mindset. I mean, ultimately, we hope we find our keys, right? That's the ultimate goal, is that we've stayed open-minded enough to really retrace our tracks and think about the place that we might have had them last. Or maybe engage our family members, because it's still possible someone took our keys, right? It isn't necessarily guaranteed it's our fault, but it allows us to have a positive interaction with our family members or those that might be around us that might help us find those keys. And the end result of that is we walk away from that situation feeling good about ourselves, feeling like we haven't impacted our relationships or any way, not adding to that sense of guilt or shame as we work through that situation to try to find our keys. So again, thinking about the impact of those our cognitive thoughts and those traps that we can fall into, and recognizing that when we can see the potential traps and make a choice to choose a different path of thinking, can really make the outcome more positive. All right, with that, and again, by no means is today's presentation cover all of the potential options around compassion resilience, but trying to give you, again, a few tools that you can adopt. So the next thing that we want to talk about are behaviors. And our resilient behaviors really kind of present themselves in three possible options. So the first one's prevention, creating those habits that build resilience before we need to even use them. Responding to stress with calming actions, and then social support and cultivating really that social network. And so we want to think about really the preventative strategies. Again, because of the field of work that we all work in, none of this is new to us, but it's important for us to think about what it is that we are doing, or maybe that we've fallen away from, that we need to, again, dust off those tools and put them back in our toolbox, or bring them to the top of the toolbox to remind ourselves there's things we need to do to take care of ourselves, to get through the challenging pieces of this work that we do. So we need sleep. We need to adequately hydrate our bodies. We need to fuel our bodies with good food and whole, clean food. Physical activity, man alive. One of the things that I notice most is when I am not allowing myself the opportunity to just get up and move. I've actually started bumping meetings back by 10 minutes. I just did this yesterday. I had a Zoom in the afternoon, so after a long day of staring at my computer. And then my next meeting was scheduled to start, like, butted right up to the next meeting. And I sent a message to the next meeting participants and I said, I'm bumping our meeting back 10 minutes. I need to go outside. I get to this point in the summer myself, and I'm feel like I need to soak up as much sunshine as warmth as I can, like if I could store it or something for the winter. And it really creates a sense of anxiety for me if I feel like I'm not getting enough time outside. And so I've bumped back meetings by 10 minutes just to be able to get up and move my body and get outside for just a couple of minutes. And then I'm able to come back and be focused and refreshed. And so that's a really big one for me. And then making time for relaxation, and whatever that looks like, it looks different for everyone. Carrie, I love that you shared. I love this quote because this also embodies my knowledge of how to fix things. It's pretty limited. I'm not mechanical and I have not a lot of technology skills. So I love the strategy of, like, when in doubt, just unplug it and plug it back in and see what happens, right? And a lot of times, magically, it works. And we need to remind ourselves that it works for us as well. We just need to unplug even just a few minutes and give ourselves that opportunity to take some deep breaths, to, again, walk outside if that works for you or it's accessible for you, whatever it takes for you to be able to just step away and reset. Just turning down those cortisol levels in our brain for a few minutes allows us to come back to the space that we need to be in a different kind of mindset. Certainly those short breaks make a difference and they matter. When we can unplug for longer durations, that's also very, very important for us as well. All right, next piece, responding to stressors. This ties into our conversation at the beginning when we talked about those ways that compassion fatigue shows up. So we want to be able to recognize it. What are those thoughts, behaviors, feelings, and emotions? And what are the body sensations that are inherently happening that we might be ignoring that let us know that we are experiencing stress. So that's the first place, recognizing it. And then strategies that we can employ include breathing strategies, taking a break, engaging in acts of kindness. So giving an act of kindness to someone else. And it can be something super simple like holding a door for someone or writing a note to someone of appreciation. Just that act of kindness is a really substantial behavior for building our own resilience. We also know that acts of kindness actually have like a threefold impact. So not only do they impact the giver of the kindness, they impact the receiver, but we also know through research that someone that's just passively observing an act of kindness has a positive emotional benefit from just observing that act of kindness. So if you don't have the capacity to give it, and you haven't received it, maybe you can look for it. And it kind of goes along with the Fred Rogers quote of like looking for the helping professionals, right? Looking for the good people in the really hard times and the really difficult moments. Sometimes just seeing them and knowing that they're there, and it doesn't have to be us, is really beneficial as well. Again, responding to our stressors, stress generates a tremendous amount of emotional energy inside our bodies. And when we can physically deplete some of that emotional energy through a physical expenditure of energy, we can have better capacity to respond to our stressors as well. So any kind of physical activity can be substantial. And then reducing our screen time. Sometimes it's hard to do that in our work world, but we can take better control over it, maybe in our personal life, to create a little bit better balance as well. Again, not the only options, but some really important ones. And then social support. I don't know if any of you are like me, but when I'm really struggling, I tend to withdraw and retreat and sort of pull away from the people that are important to me as opposed to engaging them. And I know it's not what I need, but it's what my body and brain does. And I have to actively work to do the opposite of those pieces. So we are created as social beings. It is part of our human nature to be connected to other people. I'll draw your attention to the very last bullet point, quality versus quantity. We don't need to have a large circle of people, but a few quality individuals in our lives that we can reach out to and connect with is critical and important when we're having a tough time. And when we recognize that we've withdrawn and isolated ourselves, that's an important time for us to say, I need to reach out and I need to connect, because this is an integral piece of who I am as a human being and not just the work that I do. Being open to new connections and thinking about ways and places we can build new connections, practicing forgiveness and giving grace, being open to being vulnerable. And that is so hard. And there's a lot of anxiety and fear generated around vulnerability. And yet that's a place where we gain sometimes the most significant connections are when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. Volunteering is a great opportunity for us to build some social connection in our world. And sometimes it's a way that we can kind of trick ourselves into some social connection because we feel like we're giving of ourselves, but at the same time, we're interacting with other humans in a compassionate way too. And then whenever we can combine connection and the natural world, there is substantial research that says just being in the natural world is an important piece. And when we combine social connection and the natural world, the positive impacts on our bodies and our brains is significant. And so whenever possible, combining the natural world and our connections is such a great strategy for us to take. All right. So social support is a space that we can really engage in our workplaces as well. And I'd love an opportunity for you to think about how do you give and receive social supports in your workplace? Can you think of a time when you felt really supported by a colleague during a stressful time? What did that look like? And how did it impact you? Not surprised. Oh, okay. Yeah. Compassion, empathy, caring. Sometimes I feel like this is tough. And I expected this to not have quite as much engagement around simply because sometimes we get so focused on our own work and we get so focused on all those things that you said that are hard and that are stressors at the beginning of the presentation today, that it can be really hard to give and it can be really hard to receive social support in our workplace. And yet we know that it's a really, really important piece of continuing and being able to do the work that we do. So we need social support in our personal lives to sustain us for the work that we do, but we need to find times to connect and create that social support in our workplaces as well. Oftentimes we have a hard time engaging the community and having supportive colleague just verbalize that we are doing our best can only do so much. Yeah, and can only do so much. Oh, so true. Just hearing that from our peers, right? Like I see you and I see the work that you are doing and how hard you are working and that it's hard. Just being seen and heard and not having someone need to problem solve anything for us matters so much, so very much. I just want to acknowledge too, we're running to the end. I'm going to pick up the pace just a little bit so that we can, I can give you a bit of time at the end, but please, before you hop off the call today, please take a moment and open our evaluation link that Zoe put in the chat. I love your feedback today, and I would love, we always welcome any suggestions and recommendations that you all have for how we can continue to support you in this office hour space or in other ways as well. So please take a moment before you hop off the call today to open that evaluation and share some feedback with us. All right. So I don't want to skim too quickly over this concept of feelings, but for the sake of it, unfortunately, we are going to go a little bit faster. One of the things that we can do to really key in to where we are at is to really reflect on our own personal mission statement. And so taking a moment to just think about what is my personal mission statement, and not my work mission statement, but like, what is my personal mission statement, can really be a valuable strategy for us to do. And so, again, we don't have time to really spend too much time developing that out right now, but I'll encourage you to take some time to think about that after our call today. Because the next piece is really thinking about our personal mission statement and our scope of control. We talked earlier about there's a lot of things that we don't have control over that we have to recognize. And what we really want to look for as we work on building compassion resilience is where our personal mission and our scope of control overlap. And in that space, that's the space that we can identify the things that we can do to accomplish and fulfill the mission that we have created for ourselves in the life that we are living. Again, we can very quickly fall into some traps that allow us to get really stuck or to feel like our mission is impossible to create. We want to think instead about what are the tiny things that we do every single day that contribute to fulfilling our mission. And every day it is likely that you are accomplishing something and you are overlooking that accomplishment. And so with that, a huge piece of noticing our feelings and finding feelings of accomplishment, especially in the work that we do, but it's also related to the personal mission that we've created for our life. It's really important. So we want to stop and think about the accomplishments that we achieve each and every day. They can fuel and be those alternative thoughts that provide evidence of what we are doing. And recognizing the things that are within our scope of control when we feel sometimes like there's so much more that's out of our control than is within our control. So as you're hopping off the call today and as you're getting ready to go, I want you to think about what are those things that you've accomplished on a daily basis, even the small things that lead to your overall purpose and mission. All right. Quick, as I close out my time with you today, we have this model. We are in the center of it, right? All of these things impact our ability to build resilience, and recognizing the relationship that we have within them. Self-care is what we can do for ourselves. We also want to leverage our relationships and create that social support. Work within our organizations to create change and practices that allow us to work at our best ability, but also to prioritize self-care. And then we want to think about, what are the issues in our culture and our society that are beyond our individual control, and let those things go, and recognize the spaces where we do have space for creating social change and making an impact in that way. Again, huge overview. I apologize right at the very, very end. Ultimately, the goal of all of this is that we get to a place of compassion, satisfaction, so we're able to feel a sense of accomplishment, a sense of choice and agency and positive purpose, that we find joy in helping others personally and professionally. We find energy and motivation to continue the work that we do. As you leave today, I encourage you to take some time to just thinking about setting your own intentions. Quietly reflect, if you have the time at some point today, ideally, on all that we talked about and all that I shared. Jot down a few intentions that you might have for building your own resilience. And even if you have the capacity to think about, how can you make an impact in your organization and in the spaces that you have an opportunity for control as well. That was a lot. Thank you all so much for your engagement in the chat. I'm going to try to turn my video back on so I can at least say goodbye face to face. Thank you for your engagement in the chat, for your annotation in the space. We can absolutely share these slides out with you and the content that we covered today. Again, please take time to fill out our evaluation. Give us some feedback on today, as well as other strategies that we can bring and tools that we can bring your way to support you. Thank you all for the good work that you are doing. Thank you for being here and prioritizing this time. Take some deep breaths, soak in the world around you, and recognize that what you do matters, even if it doesn't seem like it sometimes, and we get lost in the struggle. Thank you again. Have a great day. And I'm happy to stay on if anyone has questions. So we can go ahead and stop the recording.